logs will be done. Each and every log that has been generated, we're gonna forward it towards our indexer. Sorry, right? Usually on our critical servers, for example, it might be file server, DHCP server, DNS server, which are critical for our organization. We're gonna install universal forwarder into it. So that what will happen, so that universal forwarder will try to send all the logs that are generated into our indexer part. Then okay, right now we learned about, okay, logs will be sent towards our indexer. What does an indexer does, right? Indexer is a critical or a crucial component of your Splunk, where it does the major part of the activities, all the logs, right? And it will do the aggregation and normalization. What is the meaning of aggregation and normalization? There are new terms. You might be thinking, okay, Surya, what is this aggregation normalization? Where will it is going to happen, right? So what will happen is, remember guys, when you go to the office in the morning, 6 o'clock, you log in. And after 10 minutes, you log out, you go for a break, you go for a cup of coffee. You'll come back again by 9 o'clock, you go for breakfast, again you log out, come back and log in. Again, your friend came to the desk and you went somewhere and again you log in. So what will happen? These login, logout, frequent login, logouts, if I store all these logs, unnecessary information will be consumed, right? Unnecessary information will be consumed. Sorry, unnecessary storage space will be consumed. So what will happen? To we can we can collide or we can collaborate all these similar logs into one particular log, and we mention, okay, login and logout events. Event count equals to 5. That means 5 times you have logged in today, right? If I mention like this, it will save some space for me. That's what we call them as aggregation, right? Aggregation in your indexer part. What is the meaning of normalization? At a time, firewall will send the log. At a time, even your DNS, DHCP, file server, all other critical server will keep on sending the logs. How to store this? If I mix everything, will it be okay? The answer is no. If I mix every log, how can you be able to look at that, right? You need all those stored in an individual manner. Okay, for example, you need to store them separately. Only firewall logs should be available, only DNS logs should be available. That's what we call them as the normalization. These features are shown and owned by your indexer. Indexer does the job of storing the logs. It will does the job of aggregation, normalization. Aggregation in a very simple manner, so collaborating the similar type of log into one log, we call them as aggregation. Storing all the logs in a separate manner, right? Basically, because of its capabilities, we call them as normalization. That's what your indexer does the job for you. Then Searchlight is very simple. Searchlight is nothing but your UI. It's just a graphical user interface, right? It's just a graphical user interface. So how a UI looks like, we call them as the Searchlight, right? So usually uh, Splunk Searchlight, we're going to have a demo of it in our tomorrow's session. But however, Searchlight is nothing but it's just a simple UI. How the tool UI looks like, we call them as the search head, right? So that's what we're gonna see in our Splunk basic architecture. Remember, so when someone asks a question about the Splunk architecture without explaining these three components, your architecture will never end of it, right? You need to speak about universal forwarder, speak about heavy forwarder, what does an indexer does, and search it does. Clear? Understood, guys? Splunk architecture is a very important thing. At least you got a basic idea of it. As I said, if not your 100% understanding, at least you got an idea of it. This is what the maximum screen size I can make, Chinmay. Okay, I'll repeat once again. I'll repeat the entire architecture once again in a very simple manner. Splunk architecture majorly consists of three components. First thing is forwarder, second thing is indexer, third thing is searcher. Within the forwarder, so what it does, whenever the logs that are generated by the log source, we need some agent to take those logs from the log source into our what we call them as the Splunk indexer part. Who does that particular job? Forwarder does it. How do they do that one? Right? So how do they do that particular one? Forwarder is having two different components: heavy forwarder and universal forwarder. Heavy forwarder, what it does, heavy forwarder will do some sort of filtering. We don't need all these logs; these consume unnecessary space to do it. So let's just ignore, right? If you don't want those logs from that server, you can install heavy forwarder and do that particular basic filtering, and it will forward the rest of the logs. So just like that, in the heavy universal forwarder, as the name itself says, universal. That means every log that gets generated from that server will be forwarded automatically. You don't need to install this particular aspect of it. So that's what we call them as your forwarder part of it. Next thing is indexer, right? So indexer, what it does, indexer majorly does the job of storage of the logs. It will store the logs first, right? Second thing is all about related to, so it will does the normalization and aggregation. What is this normalization aggregation? As the name itself says, aggregate, grouping of similar logs. As I said, if I store individual logs, it will consume a lot of space, and if they are similar logs, I can make it as a group. That's what we call them as aggregation. How does grouping will happen? Grouping will happen among the logs of firewall, among the logs of Active Directory, right? In their own logs. I can't group Active Directory log with firewall log. They are total different entities because firewall log is different, Active Directory log is different. That's how it works. Normalization is nothing but, so here at a time, firewall will send the log, Active Directory will send the log, antivirus will send the log. Can I store all of them in a mixed manner? The answer is no. End of the day, you will say, sir, first log says antivirus, second log says Active Directory. What should I do? So to store them in a separate section manner, right? So for example, back in the school days, so probably every one of you used to gather at the prayer section, right? So it might be from first standard, second, third, fourth, fifth. But after the prayer, each one of us, we used to go back to our own sections, right? So first standard, like we used to go back to our own section. So just like that here as well. So what do we do? So normalization will happen on top of grouping of similar type of events. So that's what will happen at your typical normalization part of it. Okay, so then that's about the indexer. Search it in very simple, it's just a UI, guys. Don't worry too much, it doesn't have any too much of technical aspect to it. So it's just a UI, it's a graphical user interface, right? So it's what about our UI is all about. That's about it. And if you want to see the difference of universal forwarder and heavy forwarder, you can see universal forwarder cannot filter or mask data. It doesn't have any UI installed on the log source itself. It can collect performance data as well. How the device is performing, what is its bandwidth consumption, all those performance data can be collected because it's a universal. Usually on your critical servers, file server, it might be DNS server. So we're gonna install universal forwarder. Heavy forwarder, it can filter and mask the data, right? Some sort of data, if you don't want, it can do the filtering. It's a standalone server, it cannot be installed on the directly on the log source itself. It will be installed as a separate server where it will go and collect the logs, do the filtering, and come back and forward that one. It cannot collect the performance data out of it. So that these are all the key differences between them both, right? So where, how we going to use this one, it depends on the organization to organization. Some organization they'll install universal forwarder because they are critical ones, collect all the data. We're going to install in our universal forwarder. Some they will install heavy forwarder. It depends from company to company, the process and the techniques they are going to follow out of it. You can see here, these are the different deployment option. In the option number one, universal forwarder will take all the logs, it will send it to the heavy forwarder, then to the indexer, then to the searcher. In option two, universal forwarder, indexer and heavy forwarder will be installed on a one single server, then the search it. Then these two will be installed in a separate manner. For example, if your company is in India and US, all the logs in India will be sent to the Indian indexer. From US, will be sent to the US indexer out of it. So likewise, we can have these customization options. Who does this particular thing? Are we going to do that? No. Your Splunk admin does that particular installation for you. We just need to have a knowledge of how our Splunk architecture has been deployed. It's very important. Tomorrow, when you go to any company, you get a job. So first thing, know the company very well. See how many users we are, which are the locations we do the business, how many servers we have, which all the security solutions are installed where, right? If you know your company well, you can secure well. That's what my belief is. Okay. So then in the data flow, you can see this is how the data flows usually in the organization. This is just a sample thing, what I have shown to you guys, right? Log source, universal forwarder will send a log towards heavy forwarder will send it to the indexer. This is just a sample deployment option. You can see here in real time, this is how it looks. You can just take a minute of time and you can have a look at it in a detailed manner. SH stands for searched, HF stands for heavy forwarder, right? Rest others, I think you will be able to grab it. This is one of the sample small companies architecture. Splunk admin does that particular job, Ravindra. Onboarding of the logs because the security analyst doesn't have admin access to it. Splunk admin does the job of installation and onboarding part. We just use it for analysis purpose. How does the company takes licensing of this? On what amount of it, right? Splunk licensing will majorly be done by amount of data indexed per day. Per day, if I am able to see 10 GB of data, 20 GB of data, 60 GB of data, it all depends on the company and its size. Right? If I have hundreds of log source, security solutions, and all those things, obviously data will be more. Then I need to go for much of it. How can you calculate EPS? First thing is Splunk, what they will do, they will see how many logs are we going to hit per second. EPS stands for events per second. EPS stands for events per second. So EPS, it will be 2000. That means 2000 logs are coming per second. Think of it, guys. Per second, 2000 logs are coming in. To store one log, we need 400 bytes. For 60 seconds, right? For 1 minute, this will be for 1 hour. This will be for 1 day. So if you calculate it per day, you need 69.12 GB of licensing from this Splunk tool. So what they will do, rather than taking up 69.12 GB, they will take 75 GB or 80 GB. So that on some occasional manner, if the logs increase right enormously, today we have high traffic into our organization because of holiday and all those things, we should be able to grab those logs as well, right? So licensing just works like how you recharge your mobile phone. Once your recharge is done, you're no more able to use that one. That's why we go for recharge basis on a monthly basis. That's how here also Splunk licensing will work. Per second, how much of data you're getting, calculate it for per day and take that much of license so that you will be able to store that particular data out of it. For retention time, so for example, some company will store the raw log for more than a year, and parcel log will be stored for more than 3 months, right? So this retention time will differ from organization to organization. So Splunk installation, how you want to install this slides, I'm going to share it with your group. If you want to install furthermore, you can just take it out as a reference.